This episode of the Lunduke Show is brought to you by System 76, dedicated to making the best machines for developers and engineers. And of course, they run Linux. Of course, they run Linux. Of course, they do. System76.com and Pogo Linux. From a single desktop to a complete data center deployment, Pogo Linux offers a full line of servers, workstations, and network storage solutions. Find out more at pogolinux.com. They got Linux right in the title there. And of course, viewers like you over at Patreon. I love my viewers over at Patreon. They're the best Patreon viewers. My Patreon viewers are better than all other Patreon viewers. Hey, Matt. Nice to see you, my friend.
Hey, hi. How are you? Howdy, howdy.
I'm doing fantastic. Today is Thursday. It is Linux Day on the Lunduke Hour, which means we have a relative boatload of questions.
Usually just a few. Yeah.
Before we get into the nonstop questions, I have a little bit of housekeeping to take care of.
All right.
First, this is the first episode where we're doing this show recorded this way in full 1080p and streamed in 1080p all at the same time. It's looking good. I've done a couple of test recordings over the week. Hopefully nothing explodes. But my little wild dog from System 76 is sitting here under the desk and cranking that sucker away. I'm loving it. So we're at full 1080p now. Second thing, this isn't the Lunduke Hour anymore.
Oh, it's not.
It's not. I took the hour off and just called it show.
I think that's a safer bet.
The amount of times, as it was, very few of the episodes were right about the hour mark. They were either like a little more or they were like 40 minutes. It was just kind of whatever it was. So I'm like, you know what? I really just called it the hour as a goof anyway. It's the Lunduke Show. I just make it simpler. And I'm starting to do a bunch of short videos. So this will make it a lot easier. I did some short videos early in the week. And then over the next couple of days, I've got some terminal shows coming out where I show you guys how I live in the terminal, how to use certain terminal applications, and how to be elite hacker, basically. It's friggin' fantastic.
So elite.
Oh, man. The leadest of the elite, my friend. All right. Well, as always, it's Thursday, so we take all the questions. We got questions coming to you from Twitter. I'm just going to go ahead and read some of them off here. We'll start with Twitter, and then we'll hop to Mastodon. We got some pretty good ones. Actually, before we do that, did you see the thing, Matt, where Red Hat is dumping ButterFS from their new version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux?
I did glean something in passing, yes.
Yeah. So basically, they're just tossing it out. They never... I thought that was interesting. People are kind of curious about it. And so, people are coming down on different sides of the fence. So I reached out to a couple of folks to get their thoughts on it because honestly, other people's thoughts are probably going to be more interesting than your thoughts and my thoughts.
More than likely.
Yeah, in this particular case.
Right.
The only one I've heard back from so far is Richard Brown, the OpenSUSE chairman, just because he has to reply to me immediately contractually. So I wanted to read his statement. This is of Red Hat dropping ButterFS support. And I quote, "I'm disappointed that Red Hat customers will not be able to get comparable features to SUSE Linux Enterprise without paying Red Hat for additional features, but glad that the decision has no real impact on SUSE's use of ButterFS, as Red Hat were not really contributing anyway, and it continues to be the reliable root file system of choice for SUSE Linux Enterprise and OpenSUSE." That's the official stance from the OpenSUSE chairman.
Okay.
Take that as you will.
Right.
File system wars. I don't really get into file system wars because
different folks. Whatever.
Yeah, right. I don't want to fault them for it. I use ButterFS on some of my machines, and some of my machines I don't because I'm a man of habit and I like EXT. Whatever. It's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
There's benefits to everything, I think that really what it comes down to. There's what you're comfortable in and what you're not. If you want to set your data on fire, for example, ButterFS is an option. You can do that, or if you value your data, EXT is good as well. It just really depends on what your level of fire is. So yeah.
Here's the thing: I've heard great things from people from multiple people who have data centers reliant on EXT, ZFS, and ButterFS. Now, the interesting thing here is, so this all happened because this all came about at a period of time when Red Hat made a file system acquisition just recently for something that's not open source, right? So technically, if they go with that, and Canonical goes with ZFS, which is not GPL compatible currently, that means that neither Ubuntu's offering, which they sometimes feel is enterprise, sometimes don't, depending on what their marketing idea of the day is, and RHEL could both be non-GPL compatible enterprise Linux distributions, which is interesting to me.
That's gonna get rough.
Honestly, what's going to happen is we're gonna hear spicy words from Richard Stallman on this one.
Very spicy.
That's what I'm thinking. Otherwise, I don't have a dog in this race. Yeah, I work over on OpenSUSE and stuff, but I really don't have a file system thing. I don't know.
I think it depends on how you assign importance to a thing and whether or not that's really. It's not like someone peed in your Cheerios, really. That's how I look at anything. My Cheerios are still crisp. They look great with milk, and they're free of any. No one's peed in them. So so my file system. Yeah,
that is probably the most apt metaphor you've ever whipped out. Fantastically done, my friend. Nailed it.
Yes, exactly. All right, so that happened.
That definitely did happen. A lot of people have asked about that today. So, there actually was some really good conversations going over on the R Linux Reddit, where some of the people who worked over at Red Hat on ButterFS before they left Red Hat were commenting on, why they think that might have been dropped and whatnot. It's interesting, but I'm interested in more different kinds of stuff than file systems most of the time. We got a lot of questions, more than usual, about leaving Google services.
Oh, that's interesting, because I was kind of doing a variation of that, as far as like I'm done with the internet and just keeping it all land based.
I saw that. That was fantastic.
And I was inspired by your. It's like, how can we spin this just a little? Same principle, but just basically, it's like, okay, it's the apocalypse, and I've got juice but no internet. Now what? How do I entertain myself? And,
that you're a good man. This is we've talked about this a little bit on the show over the last month or two. It does come up a bit. Well, a lot of people are talking about dumping Google services again. That comes up every couple of months. Everyone kind of gets excited about leaving Google services behind again.
It sounds awesome on the surface, but there's more work involved than most people probably realize.
There's a lot of work. So John Sador over on Twitter specifically asked, thinking of dumping Google services, are there equally effective open source apps that can be considered as replacements? And now I'm assuming he means open source web apps. I'm assuming he's going that route.
Probably.
I would guess. Otherwise, he would just say LibreOffice and put everything on USB thumb drives and call it a day. And so I don't know how much you saw it, but the Colab guys now have a built-in version of the online office, the Collabora online office, as part of the Colab Now system. So Colab Now is all open source, all free software, email, groupware, calendaring, yada yada, and some file storage. They added this on top of it, so now there's the file storage and there's the calendaring, and you can now do collaborative document editing using a kind of LibreOffice compatible format and display. I've been playing around with it a little bit, and I'm realizing more and more that I don't like web-based big applications because they're just so slow.
Well, they're bloaty. Yeah, they're really bloaty.
And so I was using it, and it was working incredibly well. I was doing some collaboration with another person, and it was working perfectly, just as well as, say, Google Docs did.
Sure.
But I felt like it was slow, so I went back to Google Docs to test it out, and Google Docs was slow too. So I think that would be one recommendation from me personally, is between that and Nextcloud for your any sort of self-hosted calendaring and file share. I think you're kind of covered. I mean, most things at that point are covered. That's my personal thoughts.
Yeah, I think so. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I'm going to be talking about in a future video actually addresses bringing in some of those services back into your house, specifically OwnCloud, amongst a few other services in that, including instant messaging, and actually say, I want to text my wife, but I don't want to send it over the network. I want to do it over the LAN, things of that sort. I think that keeping it LAN based, there's a lot to be said for that. just in
so
general.
much, right? It is.
And
it
so
is truly
avoiding the
nice.
web-based stuff, you can do a web-based thing if you want, but you can also do it. LibreOffice does have collaboration tools built into it. They're not sexy.
It does.
They exist,
but they work, and there is the online version of a Collabora Office. I'm sure I butchered that name somehow, because I always do.
No, it's all good.
But yeah, it does function fairly well. I really am impressed. I don't think there's a lot that you need Google for the services. The big things that really come down for me are YouTube. Replacing YouTube is hard. There's archive.org, but it doesn't have the audience numbers. It isn't set up for putting together a show like YouTube. It's set up for archival of interesting video and audio content, which is great. Right. And I try and upload some of my content over there just because it's so handy. But it doesn't lend itself well to growing a big show. And I think that's a problem.
I think you touched on something there. I think something else you discovered, or actually we both discovered at one point, was that they started requiring logins to pull down some of the files automatically. You used to be able to podcast with it.
Yeah.
And now you can't do that anymore, which I understand because that's a big hit on their servers, and I get that. Yeah. But maybe give me an option where I can kick down a few bucks toward you or something. I mean, just kind of work with me here, guys.
I know. I kind of feel the same way. I have looked a little bit into Media Goblin, which is the GNU Project's kind of YouTube competitor system, and it isn't bad. It's not a bad system. The problem I run up against is I've thought about moving all of the Lunduke stuff over to a self-hosted Media Goblin solution. The user experience is nice. Yeah. It does make it a little harder for like YouTube users to discover my content unless I'm also posting over on YouTube. Yeah. But the problem becomes down not so much with bandwidth, because you can get unlimited bandwidth all sorts of places. I did some tests with that and I can handle that. It's storage. The storage costs for 1080p videos of multiple gigabytes in sizes. And I do how many videos per week? Over the course of the next year, I'm going to fill up a terabyte, rated drive. Like that, and I can't afford that as the show grows, unless the show grows like crazy big. So I end up back on YouTube. That's the only one that I've had a hard time getting rid of on the Google side for me.
You would almost have to have, and this could work, but it would have to be one heck of a sponsor. It would need to be a hosting sponsor, someone that has stupid amounts of storage available that doesn't mind.
Willing Google to throw level, a good 20 terabyte system at me. Easy. So I can store the
40.
Show. Yeah, maybe 40. But it is hard. If you're not doing a show, though, getting rid of Google is so easy nowadays, and it's really a nice setup. I mean, it's fantastic. I do not regret it at all. Ooh, Station X asks, "Hey Brian, I'm curious to hear about tiling window managers like Awesome and i3. Any thoughts? Will they go mainstream? Lots of question marks." Matt, you're the tiling window manager expert.
Not even close, but I did have a buddy of mine write an article on one once that actually talked about some of the benefits. I have an article on Freedom Penguin about it. You can obviously you'd use DuckDuckGo and actually research that if you want. Find that article if you want. But that being said, I think you're someone that is very minimalist minded, and you're someone that really wants stuff out of your way and doesn't really see a lot of value in opening up a real GUI application unless you're actually surfing the internet. I mean, like you're pretty limited. Yeah. Most everything else is going to be command line driven. So if you're that type of person, that's probably a good option for you. Yeah. That's not most people, but some folks really dig that. So
I'm kind of moving more towards that way here in the studio. What I've found really nice is, so like currently I'm using Mate for my desktop because it's nice, it's lightweight, it's a good, it's like in the middle. It's not minimalist, but it's not like current GNOME or KDE. It's kind of in the middle. But I started playing around with using things like Awesome and Xmonad and i3 and whatnot. What's nice about that from a production standpoint is I can set up my screen into a customizable grid pattern and have the couple of GUI applications I run, which really isn't many. It's basically open broadcasting software and and a couple of web browsers open with preset sizes, so they can't change sizes. They are what they are, and it makes window capture much easier and much simpler. And then I can have everything visible at once. I have my system monitors over here, and my terminal with my notepad over here with all my notes for the show and everything like that. That is kind of nice. Will it go mainstream? Hell no. It is way too hardcore to go mainstream. I mean, that's
never gonna happen.
It's never going to go mainstream.
Or should it though? Because I think it has value having its hardcore select audience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Honestly, it makes me feel cooler to use like Xmonad as a window manager, knowing that there's just not that many other people using it. Like, I know that's ridiculous and hipstery. I totally get that, but it's human nature, man.
It's not hipstery because you're not telling everyone you meet about it, like on the street as you walk to go get a cold drink or something. You know, it's just the people that care hear about it, and everyone else, hey, whatever. You know,
though. A good argument could be made that I probably tell more people about it than most hipsters tell about their, I don't know, vinyl record collection, because I'm telling thousands of people right now all at once, Xmonad, tiling window managers make me cool.
Well, and bear in mind, you know, Brian lives in a region of the country to where hipsters are pretty much the norm, you know. So
is it hipster if it's normal?
I mean, like, seriously, the town you live in is hipster capital.
It's hipster heaven, yeah. Though I don't live in downtown Portland, so it's
okay. That helps.
It's like instead of 80% hipsters, I'm down to like 50 or 60% hipsters out here. So
my wife went to a hipster college there, and it was so hipstery, it was just crazy. It was really hipstery. It was very hip.
Hip. The Tinkering Corner asks, what are the disadvantages of using OpenSUSE?
That's kind of an impossible question to answer. I mean, it's what are the disadvantages of using anything?
They're just a little different. You know. Each distro is a little different, but the reality is, like right now, I'm using Mate as my desktop environment and OpenSUSE as my base platform for everything here. I record the show, do everything I want, and could I do the same thing on Ubuntu or Fedora? Absolutely, I totally could, with very, very little difference. The setup might be a little different. The administration, I had to learn some different commands, but the reality is they're going to be able to accomplish mostly the same thing. There's a couple of desktop environments that wouldn't work so well for what I do, but the base platform, like Unity, is going to be a problem for what I do because of the way it handles compositing. These little compositing errors pop up from time to time. Same thing happens for me on KDE. I get little compositing errors, but that's desktop environments. That's all swappable. So
it is.
Debian, Arch, Ubuntu, Fedora, OpenSUSE, they'll all work for most things. I don't know that there's really huge downsides to OpenSUSE that I can think of, other than if you know something different, you have to learn a few new commands to move over to OpenSUSE. That's really the big
Well, I would say SUSE's biggest asset is Yast, because it's like, what's cool is I run into a lot of Windows admins that come into it and they're like, oh, there's a GUI for configuring all this crap. That's great, and they can actually do a lot of the of the setup in a very comfortable GUI way, from cron jobs all the way to your firewall. Right. That's pretty cool. So you know, and then as far as the rest of it's concerned, I mean, SUSE does KDE pretty well. It's always been kind of a jam for him for the most part. I've never seen any issues there, as does Fedora with no.
Yeah, they're all really good. I don't want to knock any of these distros for that.
They each have their strengths and weaknesses, sure. Yes. And I think it really comes down to what you want to do. Software availability, you got the open build service stuff there. You're going to find everything you're looking for. I've never had a problem there.
I'll tell you what, if you like the ButterFS thing. Like if you want ButterFS, choose one of the distros that's kind of supporting ButterFS, which means you're probably going OpenSUSE. You're probably not going to go Fedora, because Red Hat's getting rid of that in their main product, which means Fedora is probably not going to focus on it. You know, and Ubuntu's kind of wants to go the ZFS route. Like, okay, so you're not using that there. That's fine.
If you want to have ButterFS with more stability, you take a hard drive formatted with ext4, and then you get yourself a tub of butter and a knife, and you just spread it on very evenly, making sure the corners are covered, because none of that naked corner nonsense. And by doing that, you'll have a butter file system that's buttery great, and it tastes awesome on toast.
Yeah, yeah. And much better than pea in your cereal. Sam Hanna
generally tastes better, yes.
asks, I loved Canine Copy, but no longer supported. Any favorite DVD copier programs for Linux? I haven't done this in forever. I haven't ripped a DVD in years.
Oh my goodness.
Dude, have you done that recently?
I mean, the last thing I used was Make MKV or MKV, I think it was, and that was for Blu-rays and DVDs. Does really well.
Yeah. What's it called?
Probably a Make MKV. MKV. Yeah, I believe it's chat room. Help me out. It's MKV, I believe, right? It's not. It is proprietary, but does. But then again, you're ripping proprietary, so come on, right? I mean, it's like at this point, let's just
I'm
call
with
a spade a spade. You know, you can uninstall if it makes you. Yeah, okay. MKV. So I found that works really well for a lot of things, and including Blu-ray. If you have a drive that'll support that, you can actually rip Blu-ray as well. So
yeah,
but don't do that because that's naughty, and the man will come and spank you. It's evil, bad. But yeah, otherwise it's great.
Super bad. Naughty. Cubicle Nate asks,
Handbrake works great for DVDs, but not so much. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I don't know much about it. I really don't.
I have some experience here.
I used to. I mean, I used to like rip my DVD collection way back when. You know, but it's been so long. 32-bit. This is from Cubicle Nate. 32-bit is seemingly dying. Is there still value in Tumbleweed or other distributions continuing that architecture?
Yeah, boy. Oh, goodness. So this hits close to home because I have this stupid netbook that I just refuse to get rid of. And it's 32-bit. God, I don't know. It's like you can still find distros that support it. Honestly, I'm running Debian on it at this point because I can just kind of do it and not think about it anymore. You can also do Puppy Linux or any distribution. I think Ubuntu is still doing some limited 32-bit support, although that is dying.
Yeah,
that's where it gets kind of funky. If you can find yourself an old, you may have to put it out to pasture here in not too distant future. I mean, rolling's not going to work forever.
At some point, right?
Yeah, you're kind of. That's kind of where I'm coming to it. I put Debian on it, and I'm happy. So there's my answer.
Yeah, it will. Is there value in continuing 32-bit support? Yeah. I think if you've got people in your Linux distro project interested in maintaining it, then there's totally value in
and there's some distros out there that do. A couple of the ones in the chat room pointed out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's totally value in it. It's just, I think that value over time will steadily decline, but I'm sure there will always be a reason to have it. There's always going to be an interest in supporting some older systems and the like. And I think it should be supported till the end of time because I like supporting old hardware. In fact, I'm pretty confident we should be supporting 16-bit systems. I think we should be fully and officially still supporting 386s. I think it's an absolute travesty that we don't support 386s. Do I have any? No, but I think we should support them. But that's just how I roll.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, seriously. I mean, Debian is by no means my default distro, but it is one that I feel comfortable in using on that particular system. I have other distros I use on other computers. It just depends on its use and its need. So there you go. Google around, see what you come up with. There's a lot of good options out there. DistroWatch actually is useful in this area because you can sort based on architecture. So check out what's available.
Nice. Hey, here's one. I got actually this from multiple people. GNU Ring.
Cool.
People want to know about Ring, the decentralized video call application that's part of the GNU project. Do people want to know? And one person asks, Elia Giretto asks, will it ever become a good Skype alternative? And honestly, I haven't used it, but the screenshots look pretty great.
I have used it. With any Skype alternative, you really want to have something where you can just send someone a link and say, "Click this."
Yeah,
that's what that is the Skype alternative.
Yeah.
That said, Ring is a great application. I even did an A-Team parody with it. It was cool. I had a lot of fun. Looks good. Does a nice job. But yeah, I would say honestly, if you really want a good alternative that you can actually get your family to use, appear.in is my recommendation.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah,
it's a really good one. It's free, and all they got to do is be able to click a link, and they're done.
Right? I do like those.
Send it to them via Skype. That'll blow their minds.
Yeah. The WebRTC ones like appear.in or Jitsi Meets or there's a couple more, but some of them
Jitsi Meets awesome.
Yeah, you can self-host yourself. Some of them. I mean, that's a pretty good way to go. I don't. Ring looks pretty good, but just the same. I don't know that there's a huge difference between say GNU Ring and some of the other pre-existing like Matrix and Riots or Wire, or I guess Wire's not decentralized, but there are other options out there as well. I'm going to be looking at January Ring a little bit more, and my guess is if Richard Stallman's ever back on the show again, it'll probably be via Ring now. That would be my assumption, and I think that's pretty cool.
One pro tip I will give you is you're going to find when you install Ring, you're going to be like, hey, this is awesome. I have no contacts and I don't know how to add them. The pro tip is you need to install GNOME contacts and then add your contacts to that. Then restart Ring and you'll have contacts. Don't ask me why in their
really?
It's still a thing. It's still a bug.
All right, well, that's fine. I mean, it's still fairly young.
It's getting there.
So we'll see how it goes. The Diabolic Preacher over on Twitter made this simple comment: so much less space to reply here than on Mastodon, and then a conversation ensued about how much better Mastodon is. So we'll move on from there. Dade Murphy, dear Brian, since you live in the beer mecca, I did not realize I was in the beer mecca. What's a few of your favorite Oregon brews, if any? I don't drink anymore. I used to drink. I used to do a beer show. Don't drink anymore. Matt?
I stopped drinking so it was Oktoberfest actually it was in the 90s, I think, actually. And there was involved nearly butt naked with boxer shorts, and I was in a field and I had to hitchhike home. I don't drink anymore. Let's just say that was at that point. Pre-drunk is a thing. Pro tip: don't get toasty before you go to Oktoberfest. That's generally, especially with little bottles of hard liquor.
Agreed.
Bad idea.
Yeah, don't start that way.
Yeah, I just don't drink anymore. I have no self-control. It's evil. No.
See, I'm the same way. I think I don't like to think of it that way. I
like
to think of it as you and me. We're incredibly good at it. We're good at drinking, right?
Yeah.
So
I have no vices other than chocolate anymore. I like chocolate milk. I like sugar. You know.
Yeah, sugar's amazing, man. I'm also a big fan of just everything. I like food. I like food a lot.
Oh, my belly will test that.
My story is not too dissimilar to Matt's. I stopped drinking about almost 7 years ago because was I good at it.
Same.
Though I have heard, yes, many, many good beers around here.
The Northwest in general, I mean, Oregon through Washington, up through southern BC, I think, were pretty good about their alcohol options. Yeah.
You're good to go.
Whatnot.
You're good to go. You're good to go.
It's a thing.
Vertex Draco. Talk about why Arch is the best rolling distribution. No. Timmy asks... does the Linux on the desktop have any future, or has it gotten stale with the advent of mobile and whatnot? Now, you're at a little bit of disadvantage here, Matt. Yeah. I just recorded a video before we did this show, and I'll just direct everyone over to watch that. I'll post that video first and then this video.
Fair enough.
We just hit 2.53% market share for desktop Linux. So I took the last 3 months of numbers and plotted a growth line. It's good growth line. It's a real good growth line. But I won't spoil it, but I will say it is many years in the future until Linux spontaneously takes over more than 50% of desktop market share.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the problem is that the Linux community, by and large, just doesn't care. Those that like it use it, and those that don't, okay. I mean, I think that's the problem. Is it's not like there's Linux Inc. that's out there trying to push this down everyone's throat.
Yeah,
you got to realize this is a grassroots thing. This is like trying to get your farmers market to take on Trader Joe's. It's just not going to happen. There's no desire. Everyone's good, you know.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's all different things. You know? Like, if you're the kind of person who would only go to Trader Joe's, you're only going to be able to buy like 5 different specific boxes of food. Like,
exactly. And you value the lack of parking in really narrow aisle spaces. That's really important.
God. Right. And the fact that if you want to bake something at home, there's no possible way you can get the ingredients to buy it to make it at Trader Joe's. Freaking Trader Joe's. I have an issue with Trader Joe's. I don't like Trader Joe's.
I can rant on them all day. Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, they have like 4 or 5 things that are awesome. But the only reason to go there is to buy those 4 or 5 things. Like their bread is always stale, their produce is always crappy. Their freezer section is tiny and only has Trader Joe's branded stuff, which some of it's tasty, but it's just like a couple things. Like have you ever said, okay, I'm going to make some cupcakes. Try to go to Trader Joe's and buy stuff to make cupcakes. Try to buy some flour, some sugar, some raw chocolate. You can't do it. You can't buy that stuff. Anyway.
And I'm a pre-made guy, but honestly, just one closing thought on it. I'm a Costco guy because you know what? When I like to buy my diabetes in bulk. I don't like this panty waste single serving stuff. I want to go out with a bang.
Yeah, you know? Go out with a bang, my friend. Dustin Allen, is there any way an open handheld, I love this question, not a homebrew one, can survive in today's market? I miss the old days of the GP2X, a Linux-based handheld, and by open handheld, I mean gaming device. And and he's talking about like this one. I built my own handheld gaming device. Which I love. And this one's the Pi Girl 2, which is amazing. I can play anything on this thing. But he's right. It has been a while since we've seen like a big push around a Linux-based gaming handheld. Like the GP2X was a big one for a while. I had one of those. They were great. But can one survive right now? Can one make it nowadays?
It really comes down to you have to. First of all, it comes down to games, and you have to hit on titles people have heard of. Now you can do the retro. You can do the retro thing and be very successful if you can navigate that licensing nightmare, or if you and believe me, that's even not installed. I've explored it. It's horrible. So you got that angle of it, and then the other angle of it is you have the higher end, fancy whatever stuff. Again, you're looking at finding titles people want to play. So you can have the most amazing thing in the world. The reason why the Pi Girl works is because it's got games that we're nostalgic for, we enjoy, we play, we can, it's not strictly homebrew games. You can, in fact,
lots of emulators. So many emulators on this Bad Mama Jamma. And plus, what's really fun is I have it set up so I can control the mouse with the D-pad. So I can boot right into XFCE on here and actually mouse around. Though it's just
right, exactly. Well,
I
think that's it.
I would love to see like a GP2X or something type handheld. I did like having a Linux powered handheld with a big community around it. Now that said, I mean a lot of people, use like the PlayStation Vita or the PSPs or the DSs in order to, do emulators and homebrew stuff on, but I don't know. I don't know if one can. I suppose one could make it. But it's going to be an uphill battle. I mean, look how long it's taken. Like the Open Pandora project, the Pyra, the new Pyra they got. The last thing I heard was 3 years ago they were about ready, and it looks awesome. It looks totally awesome. Like it's an awesome little handheld. But I don't even know if that project it's like a plus hobbyist project can make it. It's hard.
It is pretty much
it's
what
hard.
It is. And
hardware is hard.
Hardware is hard. I think that in a perfect world, we would be able to get a sliding scale licensing model, or God forbid, they just accept the fact they never do anything with it. Get Nintendo to do some sort of something to where I can put their stuff on my machine and do what I want with it, and they're okay with it. If there's some model somewhere where they don't get their panties in a bunch over it, that'd be great. And other companies as well. Or even some of the defunct companies that just have the IP being held by some troll.
There are some small companies producing like handhelds and set-top consoles around Atari and Sega Genesis and whatnot licenses, and that's kind of neat. I mean, that's kind of this, except more like limited, but still very, very cool all by itself. I don't know. I don't know if it can make it. I would like to think that someone could come out with like a GP2X now, and it would rock out. Do you remember there was a Palm OS handheld called the Zodiac? Zodiac. I had one of those. That was awesome. Cool. And I mean, it wasn't a Linux powered thing, but I would love to see more little gaming handhelds like that come out. There are a couple of them that are Android powered. which I guess accomplishes some of the same thing, but I would love
Right.
it if it was more just raw Linux. That would make me
Right.
smile. I would like that.
I would agree. I would agree. You know, yeah. I just wish that was more accessible because I think we would see more people coming together to build these things. And say,
Yeah.
hey, you know, I mean, it's retro stuff. Look, these guys aren't making any. I mean, you know, they're not really making any real money on it. When they do, they decide it's too popular and they pull it off the market anyway. So, I'm not pointing any fingers, Nintendo, but yeah, I mean, just geez.
Do you remember?
Whatever.
So, not to harp on this, but that Tapwave
Yeah.
Zodiac, one of the cool things about it was, and it failed spectacularly. Like, there was so much wrong with the device. It failed. The marketing stunk. Like, they screwed up a ton of things. But
Sure.
one of the coolest things I thought they did was the top of the device had 2 full-size SD card slots. And that's how you could buy new games. So you could buy a copy of Duke Nukem 3D
Wow.
and slide it into the top, mounts, click, run. So it's running from the SD card. So they kind of sidestepped cartridge manufacturing. All they had to do was come up with mechanisms for, you know, cloning a whole bunch of SD cards.
Exactly.
The small, and how much do like 1 or 2 or 4 gig SD cards cost nowadays? You buy them in bulk for 37 pennies and you're good to go. Slap some stickers on there, put them in a case, and now you're able to sell. I would love to see someone come out with a handheld console along those lines and be like, here you go. You can get SD cards to slide it in. There's 2 on the top. You can load in emulators, do whatever you want, make it all Linux based. Oh, that would be glorious. I would love
we
that.
could get to that point. You get me over to Alibaba Express, which is Alibaba, but the more limited quantity. And you know, you get the licensing stuff figured out. And I'm telling you, you know, there's a lot of opportunity there for enjoyment and, you know, building a little business out of it. So
I agree. I totally agree. Let's move over to Mastodon. Don't Fear the Keyboard asks, besides Linux-based shows like this one, what's your favorite real-world Linux in action? Like data centers, nonprofits, education. When you see something running Linux, what's the coolest Linux in action thing for you? What's your favorite?
Well, I think when I found out, and I think it was on Reddit, I found this out. Apparently, Pizza Hut runs their all their stuff, their entire system off of Ubuntu. Or or at least Debian. It's GNOME-based stuff, so I believe it's Ubuntu though. I'll have to dig deeper on that, but I was just like, that sounds really cool. So I think the fact that you can order things that are yummy using or on Linux, and it's like processed with Linux, and Linux is sprinkled over the top of it. That's kind of cool.
I love a little Linux processing. That is actually pretty cool. I like that. You know, for me, it's definitely just schools. Like when I started my career in software development, I was a Mac guy, right? I was all over the place. I OS2 and some Unix and things like that, but I actually focused on Mac development. This was pre-OS 10. This was the olden days. And the reason that happened is because schools were filled with Macs. And so I had the opportunity to hone my skills back in middle school and high school. And it was early Macs. I mean, heck, even in high school, we had, you know, Mac Pluses from here to the end of the earth. And they were garbage in a lot of ways, but they also let me learn a lot. Like I remember using one of the earlier color Macs. I think it was like a Mac 2 SI or something like that, and using HyperCard under like Mac OS, Mac System 6 or something, and thinking, okay, they made the video game Myst in the thing that I was using. And I remember sitting there using HyperCard because it was a class assignment. It was like make a presentation in HyperCard about, you know, how fun it is to store grain or some random schooly thing.
Something truly exciting.
Yeah. And I was sitting there talking with one of the other nerds in class, and we were talking about Myst because we knew Myst was made in HyperCard. And we were just kind of looking through HyperCard, just trying to think, how did they make this? Like how, because we both played it a lot. So now we were like looking around. This was the end. This was near the end of high school, I think. I can't remember exactly, but it was not long after Myst came out, and I was looking around, and it was amazing to me that it was possible, and it caught me to start playing around with programmability features in HyperCard, which I'd already done a lot of like coding and for my own stuff, like, you know, cheesy stuff, like copying stuff out of a magazine stuff. But this was the first time I was sitting down and it was really clicking with me that I could utilize a tool and earn a living to create something out of it and create a video game that everyone might use. And that blew my mind.
Yeah,
And so I love it when I go to schools and I see a lab of Linux machines. So no matter what they are, I don't care what distro they are, I don't care how old the hardware is. I just love to think that there's a couple of kids in that class who are like, I can fart around with this and make that a job. Like, and you can see their gears turning. And I love that, because then those kids graduate high school, go on to college, and you know what they do? They go and buy a machine from an awesome company like System 76 or Pogo or something like that, running Linux, and they spread it even further. I love the schools running Linux. That's what I love. Not on the servers, on the clients. No iPads, no MacBooks.
None of that tablet nonsense.
No Chrome OS. Real Linux. Manly Linux. That's what I love. Remogius asks, what do you think is the worst punishment for a Linux user other than installing Gentoo?
Windows
and I should
Millennium
point
Edition.
out that is
Other than Gentoo. No, they excluded that, so that went off the table.
Yeah, so that's off the table. So what's the worst punishment for a Linux user?
Honestly, not just Windows, but Windows Millennium Edition would be my go-to. Trying to install any hardware with Windows Millennium Edition would be pretty up there. Second, otherwise, that would be my go-to. Although Windows 8's pretty up there.
Hey, Matt, what's the best version of Windows?
The best version of Windows, honestly, my opinion, 2000 Pro. Second to that would be Windows 7.
All right, let's go 2000 Pro then. I would say the worst punishment would be, Matt, you have to run Windows 2000 Pro everywhere now. Because then, even when like the punishment's over, if it's almost good enough to keep using it, it'll start messing with your mind. And you'll think, I don't need to wipe this out and go back to Linux. This is working okay. That's punishment right there. You really screw with a person. Yeah. You put on whatever the most acceptable Windows is.
Yes.
That's me.
Yeah, that would be. And even then, though, because it's like I think I'm more forgiving of the older releases too, because I don't mind the fact that the way you plug in a USB drive has not changed since that period. So it's kind of like, okay, it makes the same exact sound and everything. So I guess I'm a little more forgiving of it. So I could definitely end up in a mutual love-hate thing there.
Though if the question had been worded differently, the answer would be Gentoo. Obviously. Diabolic Preacher over on Mastodon asks, oh man, he has like a 4-part question. Well, let's just start with the first part and see where we go on this. Why should the new generation of people care about stuff like IRC and BBSs and such? Should they?
Yes, care? And I think it comes down to, it's a little bit like when I spent a lot of time introducing my nephew to a lot of the stuff I used to enjoy, and I think BBSs are amongst that. Yeah. They go up there. It's up there with comic books and everything else. If you wanted to play games that you didn't have, guess where you were going? To the store or to the BBS. Yeah. So so I think that learning to appreciate those things for what they are. You see I don't know. I think in this everything's right now society, I think it's a nice way of saying, okay, I can be patient while that dial-up does its thing, and I go to school and come back, and it's still doing stuff. And I think learning some of that is good for people. It teaches folks patience. The nice things in life don't have to happen immediately. Yeah.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about it from the patience point of view. That's a really good point.
It's a really good point.
You make amazing points, Matt. My thing is, I think it's not only a good idea, but I think it's imperative that they learn these older technologies. And the reason for that is things change. And I think it's really easy for people to start thinking that the way things are right now is the way that they've always been.
Right.
It's
studying history in a sense, in a way. It's a component of that.
Yeah, it is. Computers especially have changed so dramatically almost every couple years that thinking that this is the way it is and this is the way it will be is just wrong. I mean, there's no possibility that it will remain how it is right now. 5 years from now, things will be totally different. They really will. Even if the market share numbers for the underlying kernels are the same. Something about the way we connect or what software we use or how we use it or how we interact with it, something will change fundamentally. And unless you look back over time from punch cards through magnetic tape to time sharing systems. Oh my God, people don't even think about time sharing systems anymore. Going into dumb terminals and the 8 and 16-bit systems of the 80s. I mean, unless you start thinking through these things, you don't really realize things are gonna change dramatically. I don't want to get political about it, but this morning, I was actually talking to my wife about global warming. And what we were talking about, because me and my wife are about the same age, and when we were in school, no one talked about global warming. People talked about global cooling. When we were in school, like in the 80s, it was a huge deal. The Ice Age was a coming.
They do the mammoth and all that.
It was the big thing. When we were in elementary school, we were taught about global cooling. We were taught about the patterns in the climate and how that we were inevitably going to be entering a cooling cycle, and that the cooling cycle was brought about because of man's activities, and we should change our activities, otherwise the earth will get too cold. And then there was the hole in the ozone. The earth was going to end because of the ozone layer was gone, right? And nowadays you don't hear about any of those ever. It's almost like they have been eradicated from history. Now we talk about global warming, and we talk about and I'm not saying global warming is not happening. This isn't really a political thing of what is or isn't happening. Just
it's just the comparison of the way the insights changed over time.
Exactly. And now when we talk about global warming, we talk about it like we've been talking about global warming for 40 or 50 years.
Right.
When in reality,
like there was an assumption that it had been a legacy. Yeah.
It's weird, but things change. Technology change, perceptions of culture change, perceptions of science change, actual scientific knowledge changes over time. And I think that showing people BBSs and Telnet and Gopher and dial-up systems and analog lines and 386s running DR DOS and consecutive DOS, so you have multitasking but no windows, and show them that, and you learn about how things change over time. And I think that's critical.
Well, and one thing I wanted to elaborate on with the, talking about old school stuff is like the value of the email and how that was like why we have an inbox and outbox and drafts and what that meant pre-computer and why we had an outbox so that when you synced your Palm Pilot, your email sitting in your outbox waiting for the dial-up so it can send the email.
You're absolutely right. I didn't even think of that.
Kids have no idea. They didn't. Why? It's like, why in 2017 do we have an
outbox?
Yeah, right. Like, is it like, but it's gone.
And so go back even further, and that is a metaphor for the actual box you put on your desk. That was an out box where people used to put letters into it, and eventually someone would come around, pick them up, and put them in a bundle and mail them off physically. And unless you know these things,
Well, back in the old days, our POP server, our mail server was called Phil, and he had a cart.
Yes. Phil did a great job before POP took over.
Exactly.
Anyway, I think it's a really interesting topic. I really, really do.
Yep.
I think it's an absolutely fascinating topic. It's just absolutely critical. All right. A young company. This is from Dev Noise. We'll kind of end on this question here. A young company. Windows 7 and 10 on the employees' desktop machines versus some Linux distro, something like that. They got Windows 7 10. What arguments would we consider, especially in terms of security, to move over to Linux? Like, how do we, if we're running a small company and it's all Windows 7 and 10 because that's just how the machines came?
Right.
What arguments would we consider to actually move over to some Linux distro?
I think the big one is, and I'm going back to my memory of when I did this stuff because it's been like 10 plus years. But one thing I found back in the day, for especially when people operated with proper workstations, not thin clients, is you really, you couldn't necessarily do them as a limited user in Windows because then they half the stuff they couldn't run. But if you give them admin privileges, they're installing all kinds of crap. So with Linux, you can have, you can withdraw the sudo password out, to where they don't know what it is, but they can still run applications. And you generally don't have to worry about, outside of a phishing scheme or something along those lines, you don't have to worry about malware. It's just really not an issue. So I think it's just less hassle from that perspective.
Yeah.
That they can't screw anything up. They can't, without that sudo password or admin password, they can't go and break stuff. This is really what it comes down to.
I think you're right. Yeah. A well buttoned down Linux machine, not even that well, just a somewhat buttoned down Linux. A Linux machine where you don't give them an admin account is, I think, all by itself. Turn off updates, turn off admin access for that user, and people are just good. They'll be able to do their job. The odds of them getting hacked or infected by viruses or malware are almost nil. Not nil, but really close to it. It's like an asymptotic line. It gets real close, but technically it can go to infinity before hitting zero because there's no such thing as security, really. But you can get real close.
And honestly, even with the ransomware garbage that's going around for Linux, as long as they have a proper ongoing backup scheme that is detached, separate, and isolated, it doesn't matter. The rest of it's just phishing schemes and falling for rip-off stuff on, the
only way to do that is to hire smarter employees. That's
good luck.
Yeah, good luck on that one. Oh man, yeah, Matt, how are you doing, man? Like, what's been going on in Matt's world lately? What's going on?
A couple videos. I just recorded another one that'll be going up here soon, and of course we do our hangouts every weekend. So I've been staying busy. I've been really kind of doing the video thing.
Awesome.
The
video thing. I've heard the kids like the video thing. Yeah.
The video thing is cool, but the audio thing has also been kind of a hit. And Patreon does a nice job of making that possible. So
that is nice. What's your where do people grab all that stuff at?
You can go to Patreon/Freedom Penguin if you want to support me there. And of course, you can also find my stuff posted on freedompenguin.com. So if you want to do that, you can check it out.
Awesome. You do good stuff, man. You do good stuff. That's why I have you keep coming back here. You're not garbage. You're not garbage. You're all right.
That's what I'm shooting for. I shoot for the stars and end up in the ocean.
Yeah, the Patreon audio podcast link thing is really, really handy. For those of you who want the audio for this show, that's over at patreon.com/ I think it's just Brian Lunduke.
Yeah, it's just Brian Lunduke, and then it'll be on your
remember these things.
Link. Yeah.
I have a picture. Where is the picture? There it is. That's the picture.
And it's cool because it's a special URL, RSS URL just for that person. So you can pop that in your podcatcher, and it's yours. All you and
That's awesome. It's really handy. It's wicked handy. Anyway, thank you everyone for hanging out. Now, you're going to see a lot of short videos coming out. You probably saw a few already this week that were really goofy. There's a few that coming that are slightly less goofy over the next couple of days. I'm just going to release one a day for a little bit just to see how you guys like it. Let me know how you like them. I've gotten a lot of requests for short form videos, a ton of them. And so I thought, you know what? Normally me and Matt hop on a video stream and we talk until the sun explodes into a red giant. So I'm going to try a few short form videos to complement the longer chit chat stuff like this show. We'll see how it goes, no matter what, the long form show's not going away. It's going to stay around. We're doing multiple long form shows. We'll have interviews next week, all that good stuff, but some short ones too. They're definitely easier to do. It's easier to record a 5-minute video. No doubt about it. Especially if you're like me and you're lazy and you never edit anything. Matt, one word to describe this show. What would it be?
Malari.
Is that a word?
Sure. He's a man. He does stuff. Doesn't not have the kung fu grip though.
Oh, yeah, that's right. No kung fu grip.